move LaPorte School up to the front, so that will be our first public hearing. May we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. So this presentation is on LaPorte School. You'll find on the dais that I just placed materials board that the applicant provided and also the letter that Charlie mentioned earlier. So this site is located at 1450 and 1452 63rd Street. Here we are. It is just east of Hollis. So project overview. The proposal is to modify 2 existing buildings and to a school that would hold up to 27 staff members and 177 students ranging from infants to primary school. For this project, the required findings are a conditional use permit, have to make findings for parking spaces below the minimum, and design review. So the existing space is the former site of Every Dog Has Its Daycare. So you can see here, whoa. Maybe you can't see here. Let's try that again. There we go. So the rear of the property is fully cemented. This is the east side, and this is the front. And this is, there's 2 buildings. This is the more former industrial warehouse building. And this is the former residential building that was also used for Every Dog Has Its Daycare. The proposal is to keep both buildings but modify them for a school use. So there's lots of access changes that need to be made for stairways. There's an elevator tower here that's proposed to be clad in green tile, and some new doorways in the larger building and windows along the front. This is the west elevation. So the front of the street frontage is here on the right-hand side, residential building, then the elevator tower, and then more access stairways and a rear fire exit as well. From the rear of the property, you can see this would be the play area where the cursor is moving, and the residential building, and once again the warehouse building. And then this is basically the same view we saw from the photo at the bottom. The front elevation, they would keep the green screen, but have more windows and doors. The first floor site plan for the residential building, this would be for the nursery and infants, and then the larger building would be classrooms and administrative areas on the first floor. The second floor of the smaller building, of the residential building, would be for infants as well, and the second floor would be classrooms, and in the back there would be a play area deck, which you can see more clearly on this landscaping plan. It would have a little track for cycles and rear play area. And then the front, they're proposing to add additional short-term bike parking and landscaping. The circulation plan, they're very limited for their parking because of the existing structures. So there'd be 3 tandem spaces on the west side of the property. These exist right now. This would be for staff. And then 4 parking spaces in front of the larger building, and those would be for people dropping off and picking up their children. And their plan is to have cars be able to pull in and drop off in front of these spaces, as well as pull in. They are planning to have staff trained and stationed around here to help facilitate students in and out of cars. And they also have an app that you've received information on to help facilitate that process. So for zoning analysis, the maximum floor area ratio, or FAR, is 1 at this location, and the proposal here, they're adding some additional square footage, and it comes out to 0.74, so it's well under the maximum. The building height is also under the base maximum of 30 feet. The elevator tower is the largest, or tallest, pardon me, feature of the building, and that's 25.5 feet tall. The off-street parking spaces, the minimum requirement is 9, but because of the site constraints, they're only able to provide for 7. And so the findings that I mentioned before we'll discuss later. And there are no setbacks required at this site. The existing buildings are maintaining their footprint except for the rear of the property where the fire exiting is required. There you go. So for the conditional use permit findings, the proposed use is consistent with the general plan. It's consistent with the maximum building heights and floor area ratios. It also provides accessible childcare, which is a goal of the general plan. It maintains adequate parking while avoiding excessive parking. And the childcare, early childhood education opportunity there will provide a walkable and connected city amenity to help provide for that, for employees and residents. And the design and construction respects existing architecture while creating some new signature pieces with the tile-clad elevator. Second finding is characteristics and design of the proposed use are compatible with the neighborhood. Staff finds this to be compatible. And the proposed use is compatible with the utilities emergency response systems. This is also a feasible situation. The proposed use contributes to the general well-being of the community. So the school at this location will provide new early childhood education resources near existing residential and employment centers. And the proposed use does comply with the planning regulations. For findings of parking below the minimum, findings that the adequate measures will be put in place to reduce parking demand, such as promoting use of public transit, bicycling and walking, allowing modified working hours and telecommuting. Well, as a school, the modified working hours and telecommuting will not really be feasible in this situation. However, their app does provide for multiple drop-off times and to facilitate drop-off times. And also, because of the nature of it, it doesn't really require all-day parking. It requires a facilitated drop-off and pickup situation to help move people in and out at peak times, which they are proposing. The conditions of approval require a transportation information display system inside, Emeryville RAM participation, an employee trip reduction program, and also a transportation demand management plan that would include the pickup and drop-off plan. And the applicant is also proposing 6 additional short-term bike parking spaces to help facilitate and encourage active transportation to the site. Secondly, the finding is that the reduction or elimination of the required parking spaces will not result in parking impacts on adjacent uses due to overflow parking. And based on the previous slide, staff feels that this is feasible. For design review, the findings are the design of the project is consistent with the general plan. It is consistent with the diversity of building types and scales. It is designed with additional windows and building entries along the street, and it maintains a relationship between the buildings and the edge of the street. It avoids fencing and landscaping barriers. Secondly, the design of the project conforms to the Emeryville design guidelines. It follows bay-friendly landscaping. Where drop-off facilities are necessary, the design guidelines recommend limiting curb cuts by providing curbside drop-off locations or co-locating with driveways or parking garage entrances, and that's exactly what the applicant is proposing in this situation. And also to find opportunities for creativity with architecture, and the features of their elevator have done that, as well as having a consistent design palette. Thirdly, the project is of a high design quality. So staff recommends approval for this. I'm available for questions, as are the applicants. Alan Lamond, the project manager, is here, as well as our architect, Daphne.
Sir, what are the range of grade levels that would be accommodated at the school?
Through first? Through first grade?
3 months old at the lowest end.
You have to come up to
So it would be 3 months old through kindergarten.
Okay, thanks. Oh, and another question. I was going to ask if there had been any analysis on the parking demand for the school, but then I realized that the parking requirement itself was based on the parking demand, right? I mean, it's
Okay, thank you.
yeah. So maybe I should.
It's based on the estimated parking demand, correct?
And so what is that? So then my question is, what is that estimated parking demand in the planning regulations based on?
It's complicated. It's mostly based on ITE parking generation rates, modified for the urban environment. But
Okay.
in some cases, it's based on studies that we had done on various land uses and so forth. I believe for schools, it came from the ITE manual.
Okay, Thanks.
So does the ITE break it down into like preschool age and regular kids that might be walking to school kind of things?
Yeah, I believe it does. It has several different categories for schools. Yeah. Trying to think what we used here. Actually, I believe in our zoning we have one parking requirement for schools K through 12. And we have another one for daycare centers, which we didn't consider this a daycare center. And then there's another requirement for like colleges and trade schools and things like that. So I don't think it differentiates it by grade level, though.
Do you know what the ratio is for the daycare?
I can look it up. I don't have it off the top of my head. Do you want to
We could keep
field
going.
another
We could
question
keep
while I look
going
that
while-
up?
Yeah, we can keep going, but if you wouldn't mind. Any other questions for staff?
Well, is the applicant coming up, or?
Yeah. Well, why don't we?
I just didn't know if
For
our
staff.
question should go to both staff and the applicant at the same time, or if the applicant's also coming up. So.
Yeah, I think we'll invite him up, but if, yeah, I think if there are any questions for staff at this time, it would be a good time. Did you?
I'm going to combine mine with my comments.
Okay, all right. Okay, then we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted to make a quick statement. In addition to our architectural team and myself, who is a project manager on our in-house real estate team, we also have our Vice President of Marketing, Heike, here, and our outreach manager, Tracy, and then our current admin director, Patty. And two of those gals are also current parents, and then one of them will be a waitlisted parent at our proposed new site as well. So we're an organization that started approximately in 2000. We currently have 13 schools up and down California. We're building one back in Brooklyn. And up in this neck of the woods, we have a classroom site at 6460 Hollis. And then in January, we opened a 242 student school in Mid-Market in San Francisco. And so this would be our third addition to this neck of the woods, and we're also looking at a site in the Montclair neighborhood of Oakland. So we really are hoping to expand our presence up in this area. We're a private Montessori school, so we cater to those parents who are looking for a quality Montessori environment for their child before they enter a public school education. And something that sets us apart that we provide in this neck of the woods is we have a Mandarin immersion program, which means that your child goes into a classroom where they're only spoken to in that language to facilitate picking up that language at a young age when their mind is open and more sponge-like to doing that. Other than that, if you have any other questions, I'm available to answer.
How many students are at your 64th Street location now?
18.
And do you know how many of them come from Emeryville or have parents employed in Emeryville?
Heike, do you know that?
3 or 4.
This is kind of a small question, but I just saw the material board, and on that it had cedar as the soffit and fascia material, and in the packet here on the material sheet it lists like a faux wood fiber cement panel.
Yeah, we want to go more with like a Trex type of style, just for maintenance of the property and upkeep. So it'll allow it to, it'll look like a wood, but it won't need to be painted and changed out as often, since it's kind of open to the elements, and natural materials tend to deteriorate a little bit more.
So the sheet is correct and the material board is incorrect.
Correct.
And do you know what the material is for the stairs and the stringers themselves?
Well, the stringers will have to be made of wood, and then the stairs will, is it a pan with a wood infill, with the Trex infill, is that correct? A steel pan with a Trex infill?
It's a wood, it's all the structural elements are wood, like the stringer.
So, sorry, you need to come to the microphone, please.
So So the stringers would be wood, and the treads themselves would be Trex. And then we're
That even
proposing
includes the
metal.
fire stairs,
The fire stair?
the stair at the back property line?
Yes, it would also be.
And there's a CMU wall that looks like it's like 20-something feet tall on the property line.
Right.
Can you explain like what's on the other side of that property line right there?
Yes.
So our neighboring building sits on the property line, and they have a CMU wall on that property line. And they have some glass that they've infilled from their side of the building because they don't look out onto the current play area on the current property because there's normally dogs running around out there and drinking water and whatnot. So I think it's more of a light manufacturing use on that side. So they've kind of covered that up from their side.
And what's the reason, if they have a CMU wall on their property line, what's the reason that you need to also provide one?
So we met with the building department, and they're requiring us for exiting purposes to create a separate fire separation on our property.
And the theory behind that is you don't really know what they're going to do because you can't control the other owner. Should they ever demolish that building, we would still have fire separation for our property.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I really would like to hear a little bit more about how the drop-off situation is going to work, because that's really my major concern with this project. I don't live too far from there, and I've been driving down that street just taking a look, and there are trucks double parked there loading across the street with the diagonal parking with people pulling in and backing out. It seems like a really kind of a congested situation.
And while you answer that, maybe if you could, I have sort of a question that goes tandem with that, is can you also address it says you're going to have a mobile app for pickup and drop-off. Can you explain how that works as well?
So excuse me, Chairman, are we going to get a presentation from them where they explain all of this information, or are we just going to ad hoc ask them questions about the project? Are you guys planning to give us a presentation on all these things?
No, they were all included in the report. That
Okay,
was handed out
usually
to the
we'll get a
commissioners.
presentation along with that. So I just want to make clarification that we're not going to, okay.
As a part of the project description that was provided, there's an Exhibit A, which is our transportation management plan that was put together. So in there, it addresses a lot of how drop-off and pickup is going to be handled. So I don't want to regurgitate it to you, so I'll try to make it short and sweet. But at every campus that we operate, we designate an in-house staff member to basically be in charge of pickup and drop-off as a coordinator. And so their job is to coordinate all of our teachers in the morning hours, which our heaviest drop-off happens between 8:15 and 8:30. So we will have various staff at the curb to assist children getting out of the vehicle and to assist parents to pull in and out of those parking spots, to handle queuing, making sure people aren't double parking. So there will be a plethora of bodies out in front of the building during that time of the morning. And then in the afternoon, the app, our in-house IT group has created a software app that you can use on your iPhone or Samsung or whatever kind of mobile device that you have. And we created this for our school in San Francisco because we have no parking spaces there and we serve 242 students. So as a parent, you can log on to that app and you can tell us when you're going to pick up your child, and that information is provided to our staff, and our staff then gets your child's homework, backpack, lunch, everything together, and they're out at the curb waiting at the proposed pickup time. So that speeds up not having the parent pull in, park, walk into the site, my child's in the classroom and now I've got to gather all their things and walk out. So a 5 to 10 minute process is shortened to a 30-second to a minute process. And the screenshots that were provided, and if I remember correctly, it's Exhibit C, kind of shows you how that app works.
These exhibits.
And the information that's provided to us and our staff on site.
What proportion of parents use this app in, say, the San Francisco school?
About
You have to come up.
Come on up.
Hi.
talking about?
So in our San Francisco school, we have about half of the parents, somewhere between 40 and 60% at any given time, using public transport, walking, or biking. And of the remaining ones, probably a good 2/3 use the app to pick up. Some of them are able to park in the neighborhood. There's 2-hour parking, and they park, and walk in. But a lot of them are using it, and it's been working pretty smoothly.
So you answered the question that it is also an Apple and an Android app.
Correct.
So what is your method for dealing with problem parents who repeatedly don't follow the rules and continually do just works for them?
So weekly, normally on Tuesdays, we provide what we call a weekly email. And in that email, we give updates of what's happening on campus, what events are coming up, and normally at least once a month, depending on where the campus is located and if there are those kinds of issues. All of the parking standards and stuff are always reinserted into that email. It's almost like a constant contact kind of email, if you've seen that before. So all of those guidelines are re-provided, and if there's an issue, our administrative staff does a good job of reminding parents that this is the way you approach the campus, this is where you should be dropping off, this is where you queue. If there's any questions, this is who you contact. So that happens on a weekly basis. And if there is someone who tends to want to operate outside of those guidelines, then we take the steps to bring them in and make sure that we address that with them.
So you will actually have a one-on-one conversation with them and really kind of make it okay.
Yes.
Because I could see parents wanting to chat with a friend of theirs that's also picking up their kid, and they sit out there with their car parked, double parked, and they're chatting, and
Sure.
they kind of make this a daily time when they get to meet each other.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of really having staff outside, is really to kind of motivate those moms to okay, we've got to go. We've got other parents waiting to come in. We've got other dads waiting to come in, and in most of the cases, a lot of these parents are working parents. So they need to get in and get out and get onto their commute or get to their office.
So you would say that in San Francisco, this isn't a reoccurring problem?
No, not so far.
Okay. And another question is, what is your parking plan for this facility and special events like open house or back to school night?
So for those events, those are normally done off business hours. They're in the evening, and so at that point in time, hopefully there's excess parking in the area that parents can use. But we never do back to school nights for all the students at the same time. So as you see, we have different categories of age groups. So we'll do back to school night for the infant parents one night. And then, the next week will be the toddler parents, and then our heaviest users, which are the primary age children, 3 to 6. We may split them up. We may do all the classrooms upstairs on a Wednesday night and all the classrooms downstairs on a, Thursday night. So we never load the whole campus up at the same time to have students and parents come. And those events are not open to children. They're only open to parents.
Okay, so you're relying on street parking at this particular site for that?
Yes, or there is a public parking garage
A block away?
a block northwest of us. So in those events, that information will be provided to parents and say, plan accordingly, come early, and these are additional off-site parking areas that you can use to walk to campus.
Will you have any Saturday or weekend events like annual carnival, that kind of thing?
We will have probably once a quarter. We do open houses Saturdays, and it's just open to the public. So staff will be there. They normally run like 10 to noon, and it's kind of just our way of marketing to the community for those who don't know that we're there. We send out emails, flyers, mass mailings out to everyone, saying, by the way, we're here, and we have this option of daycare/schooling that we provide for you. Come meet us, and our staff will be there.
I'm thinking more of like Harvest Festival, something that's going to attract a bunch of people on the weekends.
We haven't done those kind of things in the past. Usually the weekend events are much smaller than that. We will have some regular weekend traffic. We offer community parent and child classes, and those usually happen on Saturday mornings and Saturday afternoons. But there we're talking about 12 children and their parents, so it's not like a huge volume.
And there's staggered start times. So we'll have one infant parent and child class, and that's probably 8 to 9. We'll do one toddler class, and that's 9 to 10. So we will have 12 parents coming and going within that hour time span, spread out over 3 or 4 hours in a morning.
Another question I had, I think in your packet, you gave us a breakdown of who the top employers are in the city, ranging from Pixar to IKEA, Oaks Card Club, et cetera. So have you reached out to these companies yet in terms of letting them know that you're there, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from them in terms of the intended usage of your site?
So we haven't done that yet. We were waiting for this meeting. We have that list, and it's in our plan to start reaching out to them, assuming everything goes positively here going forward. We have agreements with in other places where we are with local employers that have, sometimes just let their employees know about our schools, but in other cases I've made special arrangements. So for instance, in Irvine, we have a school in a big office park that's owned by the Irvine company, and as part of our agreement with the Irvine company, there's a priority agreement for their tenants. We have a tech company in San Francisco that has sponsored some spots at our school. So there's been a lot of interest by employers for having this childcare and for having it close to the employees. Like our Irvine location is in an office park. There's basically no housing around it. We had one campus. There was so much demand from the surrounding employees that it filled up very quickly. And we opened a second campus right next door that also filled up very quickly. Because it turns out a lot of parents like to have their children nearby where they work, especially in areas where there's pretty long commute times.
Yeah. So you mentioned priority enrollment to different employers. What about residents?
So in general, San Francisco is an exception. That school is so full that it's really hard to get in because there's just nothing happening there. But in general, the people that live there and can get there early, and can get on our waiting list and can plan ahead, we usually are able to have openings or build additional schools if there's a demand for it, There's not, right now, we don't have a plan to give priority enrollment for citizens of Emeryville. We haven't had to do that anywhere that we went. Usually what happens is the people that enroll at our schools come from the immediate neighborhood because most parents look for childcare and for convenience. So usually the families that enroll either work or live within a 5 to 10 minute drive of the school because people usually don't like to drive out of their way to find childcare for their child.
Thanks.
And is your model generally to just go up through age about 6, or are your schools?
Right now we provide schools up to 8th grade, but our model is to cluster preschools, which then feed our our lower elementary, upper elementary, junior high school, and then eventually our plan is to open a high school, but it's down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So for this particular site, it will only be through kindergarten, but the little one-room schoolhouse on Hollis Street will go through 6th grade.
So you're going to keep that site?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you spoken to the businesses, especially directly to the east, around that do a lot of loading in and out with large trucks, et cetera, and at all?
We haven't yet, pending the outcome of tonight and pending the outcome of the vacancies in and around us. If you walk, Commissioner Donaldson can probably speak to this, or drive down that street, you will see leasing signs on buildings everywhere. So there's a lot of space becoming available in and around that area. So until which time we know we're ready to go, we will then approach those tenants that are in and around who are still around. We didn't want to go in and talk to someone early and then have them say, oh, we're leaving in 3 months.
So the idea of queuing, that I had a question about that. There was this there's 2 methods that you've provided, one where one pulls into the parking space and then out, and the other is just kind of a drive-by situation. It would be one or the other, I'm guessing, during the busiest times.
Those would happen concurrently.
That sounds crazy. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Once again, that would be the purpose, to have all those, people out on the site out front to help control all that. So, and we've done that at other campuses as well.
And having both systems work at once?
Yes, yeah. So my child currently attends one of our campuses in Irvine, and that happens concurrently, and we've got 8 staff members in that parking lot, standing in front of cars, waving people over, letting someone basically they'll stand in front of the car to let some mom out, and then, they'll say, okay, let someone else pull in, and then the next car queues, and they just keep the traffic flowing.
Okay.
Because if you don't have those people out there to coordinate, it's just a
Then it would be crazy. Yeah, okay, got it.
So how many people do you expect to have out? I mean, I'm concerned with, I can see it working better with older kids, but if you have to be bringing infants in and toddlers, that seems like a little bit more to handle.
Sure. It works really well with toddlers and primary age children. Normally infants don't utilize the drive-by drop-off, but we're only providing 15 spots, and since we operate 7 to 6, I think it's, I believe it's California law, the infant's only allowed to be in our facility for a certain amount of hours, so they will not all arrive at the same time. It'll be based off of the parents' needs on where they work, where they need to get to, as to which times they come and which times they go. So we're really handling 15 infants with having people come in and potentially park. But I know we have anecdotal stories of, I think all of our current staff at our 6460 Hollis site bikes to work. And we have several parents who will attach their children to a buggy to the back of their bike, and then they park that in our bike parking, and then they ride their bike home. So we expect a lot of that to continue to happen, which is why we provided the extra bike parking on the outside of the facility, and then bike parking on the inside of the facility.
Right, the other thing is that since it is a one-way circulation, it seems like a lot of traffic is going to be directed along Doyle, which is a bike boulevard.
So
It's
yeah,
gonna be
we've tried to
funneled down
utilize having, the cars approach the school from the east side of the property,
Right.
because that's where you have the length in the public right-of-way. Because if you come off of Hollis and you're making that left turn,
Right.
trying to cross all that traffic and those people queuing and, potentially parents crossing streets, that
Yeah,
kind
no, I
of stuff.
understand
So-
that. My concern is more that if people are coming from the west to get around, they're going to end up coming on the bicycle boulevard, which does have a lot of people that are riding bicycles with kids on the back of their bicycles at this point.
Sure,
I'm just trying to sift through these traffic things, which seem a little troubling.
sure. Understood.
Chair Moss, could I just offer a comment on this? This is purely anecdotal. I mean, I don't have any data or anything on this, but I would note that the site was previously used by Every Dog Has Its Daycare, which is sort of like, well, it is daycare for dogs. And what I understand, I've certainly utilized a daycare preschool kind of a setting like they're talking about. In fact, I used to take my children to it in a bike trailer, which we would leave there during the day. But my understanding is that the dog daycare places operate pretty similarly to kid daycare, and that the parents or owners, when they're on their way to work, drop the dog off and then come back later and pick it up. And as you know, Every Dog Has Its Daycare unfortunately had to leave Emeryville because they became so successful and they had so many people. So I would suggest, as I say, I don't have any hard data on this, but I would suspect that the amount of traffic and the amount of drop-off that they had when it was a dog daycare facility probably wouldn't be that dissimilar from what it would be as a kid daycare facility. And I am not aware of any traffic problems that ever resulted from that business.
I believe they operated there for 15 years.
Some period of time, yeah.
Do you have any sort of feeling or anything on how many clients Every Dog Has Its Daycare was serving?
As I say, I have no hard data at all. It's purely anecdotal, but just as a point of information.
I mean, I've only been in the site a half a dozen times because the current owner was very mindful of not bothering the dogs during the day because they have their routines and and every time that I was there was easily above 50 to 60 dogs in that facility at one point in time, and I didn't get to see the whole facility. That was just the open play area, and I know they had kennels under the cottage. They had kennels on the backside of the property, but we were only allowed to access certain portions of it, so we never saw the whole thing at one time. But there was always a plethora of animals running around the facility, inside the facility.
I have one question regarding the about the building and the site itself. How is the school secured at the top of the staircase? So as you come off of 64th Street, you go up to the existing house and you hit a platform. I don't see a gate or anything. It just seems wide open to the walkways that goes along the classrooms on the commercial building. So how is that going? Is that going to be secured? I mean, you don't have to show me anything, but just I didn't see it.
Yes, it will be secured.
So there will be a gate.
There will be a gate there, yeah, and it'll be key coded.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the mention of the employee trip reduction program, has some thought gone into that program at this point?
Not at this early stage, no, not yet. But we do have, some other programs that we've put in place in different urban areas where we have provided incentives for, staff to carpool. So whether it be gas cards or, there's other programs that we currently run at other schools in Southern California that we'll study and then see what might work here, because it's a little bit of a different environment here. So what's going to be enticing to staff here as opposed to staff at other locations.
What are you doing in San Francisco
What's that?
for
Incentives.
incentives?
Oh, in San Francisco, nothing. 90% of our staff takes public transportation. And then the rest of the staff who lives close by walks. It's not an environment where you own a car. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. So if anyone from the public would like to speak on this item, please come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll open this for discussion. Steven, you want to start us off?
Okay, well, to start with, autos are really the only problem I see for this project. But in my determination, it's pretty serious. I'm very concerned about the staff parking spaces being only three spaces for 27 employees, and I don't think that's enough. I understand the lower availability for parking in San Francisco, but this isn't San Francisco, and the East Bay isn't quite there yet to where people can walk to work from their homes. We just don't have that residential density. So my concern is the parking on this street parking is unrestricted, meaning that LaPorte's employees decide to drive, they'd have free and abundant parking as they arrive to work pretty early. By example, on 7:30 this past Tuesday, I rode by there on my way to work on my bike, and about 50% of the street parking was available. So my question was kind of what Commissioner Kumula is asking is, what are the actual incentives not to drive? I saw that your options for promoting not driving and a program to make employees aware of that, but I don't see any real incentives. Cost is kind of what I think is a disincentive to drive. So other than the gas cards, I'd like to see some tangible benefits that if an employee decides to drive and park on our street parking, there's a cost related to that. And so I'll get into that a little later in my comments on what I think we need to do to mitigate that. And Sarah, if I could have you put this on the overhead for me. I have some foreseen problems, and the traffic on the main arterials around here, such as San Pablo Avenue, Ashby, etc., it's really unpredictable. So I think that could cause parents delay in getting to their children at their appointed time. So they're using this app, they're told they're going to get there at 3:15, but now they're stuck in traffic on San Pablo because there was an accident. So that actually can't be done. So I think that can cause a ripple effect, causing other parents and et cetera to stack up when they meet their schedules. So I think that is a problem we have to keep in mind. The stacking down 63rd Street, as this picture here shows on the top, is there's your drop-off spot area that can hold 3 cars, and then there's 2 angled parking spaces, and then there's an entry to a driveway. If for some reason there's a delay in your system and there are 6 cars backed up, we've now blocked the access to 2 parking stalls and a driveway. So I'm really needing to see some mitigation measures that, you know, this doesn't become a problem. And then on the lower picture, you'll see that there's a van, there's a semi-truck, and there's a forklift with pallets parked in the street. So I really think because of the nature of this neighborhood being more commercial, the drop-off is, I just really see this as being a problem. I'm glad you are talking about the parking stalls and how you get people in and out of those while you also work the drop-off area. And I think that you might be able to mitigate that, but I'm just not sure the stack-up isn't going to happen. An example, your peak drop-off time is going to be from 8 a.m. to 8:45. Using the chart on page 5 in your TMP, it shows that during that 45 period time block, there will be some 100 autos. This is equal to more than 2 cars per minute. And I'm just wondering if that's been factored into your plan to handle that level of cars, and do you still feel confident that there won't be any conflicts or problems? Again, looking at the picture showing how simply 6 cars backing up in that staging area are going to cause problems, especially in the morning if people need to get into that parking lot to get to work, or, you know, want to make use of those stalls. So though your transportation plan is extensive, one of the best and most detailed I've ever seen, I feel in this constrained area with 177 students and 27 employees that there's just not enough room to handle the flow of vehicles, and I'm really kind of concerned about that. So a question I have for staff is, if the planned mitigation measures that they've drawn up in their TMP do not work to control the flow of traffic, what resources does the city have to rectify the situation? What if it's found that this location just can't handle the traffic or the problems that develop? What can we do? What do we do if we have an unsolvable problem on our hands? I mean, we are going to spend a lot of money to develop this school. We certainly can't kick them out because they're causing problems on our streets. So I think that I'd like to hear, you know, if it does become a problem, what is our city willing and capable of doing? So a statement I have is that I really want to see this project approved. The residents as well as the workers in Emeryville really need this service, and additionally it will contribute to what our city council is really trying to get, and that's our family-friendly community. So I think this is a step in that direction. But I'm really concerned to whether I can find in favor of the staff report that parking and traffic will not be a problem. I don't believe I saw anything in the plan that will strongly discourage employees from driving to work. I believe that LaPorte is correct in estimating that 90% of their parents will drive their children to school, and unlike dogs, you can't walk a child, you know, unless you carry a stroller and everything, and, you know, time in that factor with your own self getting to work. So I just see that 90% is the probably baseline minimum that people are going to drive to bring their children to school, and that's a lot of vehicles. So there's one place I disagree with staff report. The way the proposal is written, there will not be 7 parking places for staff, but only 3. The parking in front of the school is designated as drop-off and visitors, so we don't have 7 parking places. We're not asking to reduce our minimum from 9 to 7 for staff. We're asking to reduce it from 9 to 3. So if we're reducing the parking requirement we're not reducing it by 2, but actually 6. So all that being said, if we pass this project, and I hope we do find a way to do so, I really do, I feel that we need to add a condition of approval that if the city determines that to fix the issue on the street parking, we need to do timed parking, that LaPorte pay or contribute to covering the cost of implementing a street parking plan, whatever that develops into with the city, and whether that means meters, painting the curbs, or other tools or ideas. But I think the parking and the drop-off is... I ride from Emeryville to UC Berkeley to work every day. I pass several schools depending on the route I go on, and it's really hazardous. I actually will modify my route just to avoid people dropping off their children at schools. And the reason I asked that about people who don't follow the rules, because one of the Catholic schools says parents are supposed to drop their kids off at this location, and they drop them off at another location, and they make U-turns in the street in front of people on bikes and crossing the street. So these are issues I experience every day, and I can really see this becoming an issue for us, but I really want to resolve it because I'd like to see you guys become part of our community.
Yeah, I'd like to just respond to one thing you said about the staff parking. I'm not sure. I don't recall us saying that in the staff report. The parking requirement for, or the parking, excuse me, the estimated parking demand for schools is 0.08 per student, but that doesn't distinguish between staff or drop-off or whatever. It's just a straight number. So that's the number of parking spaces that then the minimum requirement is based on. It's not divided between staff or drop-off.
Okay, I'm quoting from page 4 in the staff report, and then the first line on page 4 of the TMP saying that they're going to use it for drop-off.
Page 4, under TP 49.
I'm not looking at it right now, so I can't say.
Okay. All right.
But so a concern for me is that I don't think 3 spaces for 27 employees is enough. And that's pretty much what we're designating in the plan for employees is the 3 tandem spaces. And generally because the street parking is free. It's all day long. There's a lot of it. And because the school starts so early, they're going to be some of the earliest businesses there. So their employees are going to, if they decide to drive because they don't have any disincentives not to drive, they're going to take up all that street parking, and then we're going to have a problem.
We had something similar going on in our neighborhood with EBI, and one of the things that they did to help sort of guarantee that their parents would not be parking on and taking up all the residential parking is that all of their cars have an EBI bumper sticker. You've probably seen them all over town. And if any neighbor saw that they were parked on a street, then we would inform the school and they would talk to them directly. So, I mean, that's...
Just to clarify, it's not the parents dropping off kids. These 3 spaces I'm concerned about for this 27 employees that work at the school.
Yeah. So I have similar concerns, and actually it was also about Doyle Street and that being our bicycle boulevard, and the fact that cars will have to come up to on either side of Doyle Street, on Doyle Street, and then back down to drop off their kids. So that is a lot of extra traffic on Doyle, and that makes me leery of being able to approve this, although I also very much want to approve this, and I think it is something that this community needs, and I appreciate the school. And I also I'm thinking the possibility, there was a mention of a commitment to provide some incentives for employees, so how about a Clipper card and Easy Pass that is completely paid for all employees to come to, to incentivize using public transit. That may help resolve that. So basically my only concern is with the traffic as well. And I think queuing up, I appreciate that having all hands on deck, to get the kids in and out. I think I've seen that work in other situations, and I've seen it kind of not work and then get resolved in with different schools traffic-wise. So it is a lot of new traffic on our bicycle boulevard, and that's the only way they can come unless they're going to make an illegal U-turn, which is not okay. So that's those are my concerns with this project at this point, and I am that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Well, I think this is a great project and a great addition to Emeryville. I think the building is very handsome, the way they've done it. I think the traffic issue is a little overblown. I've, over the years, dropped my grandsons off to daycare centers in Berkeley, and it's never been a traffic issue. It's for a very brief period of time, and it's, for the most part, not during the rush hour. And as a consequence, I think it would work. It may be important to provide some incentive for the employees to use public transportation, but other than that, I think it's a great project.
Yeah, I think my concern is just we are definitely bringing a lot of traffic to that street. And so I want to really go back to what Commissioner Keller brought up in his comments, which were, you know, how do we address this situation after the fact? Is there something, what's the city's role in handling or dealing with that after the fact? If the traffic does become just, you know, a real big problem. So.
Well, I can offer one thought on that. The conditions of approval say they're supposed to prepare a TDM plan, and we're supposed to approve it, and then they're supposed to implement it. And if they do all those things and we still have traffic nightmares, I suppose this is certainly not preferable, but I suppose we could get into a situation similar to what we had for the art.com sign, which is where conditions of approval were adopted and they complied with the conditions of approval, but it turned out that that wasn't adequate to still prevent the project from creating a public nuisance with regard to how bright the lights were. And there's another provision of the code that basically says if you violate any provision of the code, then you're subject to enforcement or revocation. And, you know, I would assume that traffic mess could probably be construed to fall into the same category, in which case we'd be back here to amend their conditions somehow. But that's not an ideal scenario. The best thing would be to solve it now before it gets approved.
That's all I had.
Well, I think that you're hearing from, so far, everybody that's been talking, that we think that we would really love to have your school in Emeryville, that it's a good project, it's a good service. Nobody seems to have any serious issues with the buildings, with the classrooms, with all that. But we are really, really concerned about the traffic issues, and I would suggest that we ask for at least some consultant or someone with traffic expertise to take a look and help really specify, you know, see what needs to be done to prevent things that, like the image that you see on the screen with people behind cars in diagonal parking spaces and blocking in people. I mean, I don't know whether it's designating the number of people that have to direct traffic, or whether it is restriping parking so that the flow works better, or what it is. But I think that we need to have some really specific looking at this, just given the constraints of the street and the existing, there's a lot of pinch points. There's a lot of pinch points. 63rd Street does have a traffic signal at San Pablo, so that's a good thing. People will be directed from San Pablo down 63rd, but again, if they're coming from Hollis or Stanford, they're going to come up Doyle Street, the Bike Boulevard, and I would like to see somebody quantify it a little bit more for me to feel comfortable with that. But you know, I would like to see that happen because I'd like to see the project go forward.
I mean, I was thinking also schools often have sort of certain times of the day there's no parking, it's just drop off and pick up, and that kind, like what, yeah, I think that needs to be considered as well.
Yeah, I guess repeat everybody else's comments. I recently did a child development center in San Francisco that was about this size, and I think there were 18 parking spaces, and every time I'd visit, I'd have to go find parking somewhere else. A lot of it was staff, and parents there was a drop-off area, and I guess the other thing is parents really seem to want to be able to come in and, you know, bring their kids in, or if their kids are new, or want to bring something in to their kids. And so the whole drop-off thing, I mean, I'm sure it works for some, but I'm sure some parents aren't going to, you know, just be willing to drop their kids off at the curb, and are going to want to actually be able to come in. And aside from, you know, and so you know, whatever the employee trip reduction program is, I think it really needs to be a strong incentive for the employees to use mass transit or walk. And I mean, a Clipper card, pre-charged, you know, and based on whatever, you know, some kind of study of what a typical trip would be for the staff, I think would be one possibility. Aside from that, I guess the only other comment I had was the green tile on the elevator tower. I know it's meant to sort of play off of the green screen, but I'm worried it's going to look like some of these elevator towers that we've seen from the past where they did mosaic tile and what ends up kind of looking like a latrine or something. So I don't know, but that was it.
Well, I share some of the similar concerns. I'm not very concerned about the employee parking. I do think the employees will, figure out places to park or to otherwise get to work. But I am concerned about a little bit about the pickup and drop off, mostly drop off. But I do want to give the applicant a chance to sort of prove themselves. I mean, I think they do have a very good transportation management plan that they've put together. And this is, I mean, compared to most of I've worked on several private school projects in my day job, and compared to those, this is a pretty small school. And in my experience, pickup and drop-off management is something that private schools do very well because they kind of live or die by it. And so that's why I say I would like to give the applicant a chance to show us that they can do it, because I think that they probably can. I just think that I think pickup and drop-off, I think kind of like Commissioner Cardoza said, I think they kind of tend to be a little, they can kind of tend to be a little overhyped sometimes, but they occur for a very short period of time, and if they're managed properly, the impact can be managed and can be mitigated, and so I would like to ask the staff if there's a way that we could approve this use permit, but reserve the right to revisit the conditions, specifically the transportation management plan, like say within 6 months of the certificate of occupancy or something like that.
Yeah, we actually were talking about that over here. I would suggest you could add a condition to the effect that the applicant shall report to the planning director on, their operations within 6 months of beginning of operation, and if there proves to be a traffic problem, then the TDM plan can be adjusted as necessary to address it.
I like that idea, but I don't want them coming to you and reporting something. I'd like to have more of a field experience, and if you can't do that because of staffing, is maybe put out a question to the outlying businesses. How has this experience been for you in your business operations? Not just taking the word from the school that, hey, everything's fine, we're doing a great job. I'd like to know more tangible. Like, are the neighbors that are using that parking lot that might be blocked by these cars, do they have any complaints?
We could reword it to say that staff shall review the operations, within 6 months of the beginning of operations, and then adjust the TDM accordingly or whatever. Would that do it for you?
That would, but would it also, how would we also get the point, because I agree with Commissioner Donaldson that I think we need to have this looked at before it actually happens, before they spend a tremendous amount of money into doing this. So is there a way we can approve the project, move it forward, but yet still get some kind of traffic study done to say that, yes, the TMP that they've presented will work, or no, I think that's got a few holes in it. I agree with Commissioner Donaldson that needs to be looked at.
As part of your review of the TDM? Let's see.
Well, I suppose we could do that. Typically, we like to have any studies like that done before it gets to you for approval. but I believe the conditions currently say that a TDM plan will be submitted to and approved by the director. We could require a study like that as part of that approval process.
Gail, does that fit your interests?
And make any adjustments that are recommended by whoever reviews it for us.
Probably so. I mean, because I think it's more than just how many staff are out there. I think it's really looking at what is happening with the parking striping and the zones and timing and all that kind of stuff, because it just seems like it's trying to fit something into a space that is really not set up for that, and that it needs to be looked at not just from the site perspective and the staffing perspective, but really the circulation on that street and how that would work. And
So-
maybe it is a no parking from 7 to 9:30 in the morning or something like that. I don't know, but I would like somebody to look at it.
So is that something that would happen if there was a problem?
No, it would be, if they're supposed to submit a transportation demand management plan to the director, then it would be supplemented by someone else taking a look and making suggestions on how to make it work right.
You think it's something like Fair and Peers or Kimberly Horn or something like that? But an outside consulting agency.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And is that something they could review just from the documents they're providing and what you look at, that they could just say, yeah, this is a good plan, or is it something they have to
sure.
physically? Yeah,
They review things for us
all the time.
and offer suggestions to how to make it work better. That's their expertise.
So this is something that could happen in tandem with the school moving forward? How long of the process does that take usually when things are reviewed? But,
Well,
just from some
assuming it's
papers.
not a big contract that doesn't require city council approval, which I don't think it would be, I believe this condition is required, prior to issuance of building permit?
Occupancy.
Is it occupancy?
Yeah, it's on page 15.
Oh, okay. Oh.
How are you?
Oh, right, okay. Oh, well, they've got a while. Yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
It could be concurrent with review and approval of building permit and construction, and it wouldn't be until the end of that the TDM plan is required. So we'd have that whole time for a consultant to be looking at it.
It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. With that and that condition and the other condition I made, I'm kind of ready to make a motion myself on this, but I wanted to ask one question, and it's kind of off the cuff, and you may not know the answer, but do we have any idea what the level of vehicles on Doyle are currently and compared to what the maximum level of a bicycle boulevard is? Are we really close to that? Are we halfway there? Do we know that at all?
I think we might have reviewed that as part of our ped bike plan. My recollection, I don't know if you recall this, but the ped bike plan kind of splits the city in half along Hollis Street, and it says that east of Hollis, the maximum number of vehicles on a bike boulevard, I believe, is 1,500.
Oh, okay.
And west of Hollis, it's 3,000.
Yeah.
In recognition of the fact that it's more, residential to the east. And I believe that Horton Street was the only street in the city that was over the maximum, which would indicate that Doyle Street must have been below 1,500.
All right, so if we're looking at...
I think Doyle Street's pretty low right now. I mean, it doesn't go through anywhere.
Right.
So this would be directing traffic that is not currently on there and increasing it, certainly not up to a level of 1,500. The thing is that because it's part of the bike path that comes through, a Class 1 bike path, that we get more bicycle traffic than you get on a lot of other bicycle boulevards, I think, because there aren't that many cars right now.
Right.
So there are more people riding with their kids in trailers that I see when I drink my coffee in the morning every morning. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking that if 177 students were all being brought by a single car, double that by a trip coming in and then picking up the students, I don't know that it's going to increase it. That's
I'm looking more at
cars
just
a day.
conflicts,
Yeah.
turning conflicts, turning on, coming up and turning around on a couple of blocks just to get in, and people.
Yeah.
So that's I think Fair and Peers looking at, or a traffic consultant looking at it would be really good. I'm also curious. I saw that there was that you're going to need an exception from the Department of State architect because of the lack of outdoor space for the kids? How long does that process take?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
We don't have to do a DSA approval because we're not a public institution.
Oh, okay.
But is it
We have to do the
Department of Social Services?
Oh, okay.
And that can happen upon approval as soon as we move forward. We received a 50% waiver at our San Francisco campus because it's in an urban area. And those are not uncommon in and around this area. I mean, there's local schools in Oakland, Berkeley, who have that or more.
Okay.
So it's not something new to them.
I think this issue came up with ECCL also. Only, I guess that's DSA or whoever it is,
For
but
public schools?
There is one more traffic concern about 63rd and Doyle that comes up often, is that people that are coming west on 63rd Street come up to Doyle Street and don't realize that it's not a four-way stop, and I've seen so many almost accidents there. It's so that needs to be taken into account as well. I just want that for the record.
That type of thing
all the time.
That type of thing would definitely be something that I think should be looked at in a traffic study, whether there's a sign warranted.
is the stop sign on 63rd or on Doyle?
The stop sign is on 63rd, and the cross traffic on Doyle has the right of way and does not have a stop sign. Yet the people at 63rd just figure, oh, it's a four-way stop sign, and then barrel right in front of all kinds of bicyclists and cars. And I see it all the
I would
time.
be hesitant to recommend a stop sign, another stop sign on a bike
I think
boulevard.
that there needs to be a sign saying
Cross
cross traffic does not stop. That would
yes.
solve it, but that is
Yeah.
one of those things that I've been hoping for on all along Doyle, and I think it's this would be a great time to put that sign up.
I suppose we could add that as a condition.
I'm going to.
Good.
I
do that.
coming across Tuesday when I was looking at this, I was confused. Do I only have a stop here, or do the bicycles do? So if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to make a motion if we're ready. So I make a motion that we approve the condition approval. We add in the condition that we do a concurrent traffic study, and in that we look at the Doyle Street impacts. Another condition approval that if it goes through, that at the intersection of 63rd and Doyle, that we put in a cross traffic does not stop on the 63rd Street side, both east and west direction. And I'd like to put in the condition approval that I said that if we do kind of realize that this is a problem and we need to look at traffic parking mitigation measures, that whatever the city does do, that the LaPorte School either pay for or contribute to, and whether that's making parking restrictions during a certain time, taking out parking places, putting in a green curve for 2-hour parking only, whatever the city decides that we need to do to mitigate that. And we may not have to do anything. It may be perfect, and this never comes to truth.
Is this part of a six-month review?
No, it's a condition of approval that if a year later the population
is
school
forever.
is fully occupied and they find that it's just not working and we need to do something with the parking on that street to make it work better, that there's some financial contribution from the school to pay for that.
After the fact?
After the fact. Why would we charge them for something we don't know is going to happen yet? It's just an idea that if it becomes a problem, they contribute to helping fix it.
Could the traffic reduction program be considered as part of the traffic study? I mean,
Well, I'm sure that they'll use that to study the traffic. I'm sure that
instead of trying to have that as a penalty later on, actually have that as something that they're considering within the traffic study.
Yeah, I mean, if there needs to be restriping or something, curbs cut, et cetera,
Or
that
even
should be
clipper
part
cards
of.
or,
And also, I would like to, friendly amendment to.
Yeah, I would put that they do clipper cards as well as part of the traffic mitigation measures. But I'm just concerned that we do all these things and we still have employees that choose to drive because it's still cheaper and easier, and we still have cars stacking up 6 or 8 every morning, and delivery trucks can't make their deliveries. When we're 8 months into this project being open, if we don't put in a condition of approval and when the city decides we have to fix the parking on the street, we're going to pocket that whole expense because of LaPorte's impacts.
Well,
and I just want to protect our financial future for future impacts or mitigating the impacts that the school has caused.
Well, that's
Yeah,
gonna
because
kill
even
the
though
deal.
this is...
You can't have an open obligation.
But,
like that.
Well, we can continue to talk about that, but what I was going to say is that right now we have a 6-month requirement for staff to go and check things out, but as I think the applicant mentioned, a lot of businesses on this street are in the process, they're in transition. So 6 months from now, there may be a high vacancy rate, and there may not be an issue or with conflicts with other, businesses, but later on down the road, when these buildings get leased, then there should be some mechanism to deal with that when the reality of it, takes place.
Yeah, because if the school is confident and their program is going to work, there will be no cost. This is just a safety valve that if that caused a problem that they didn't foresee, if it was an unforeseen circumstance, they realize that cause was by them and they're willing to help us finance the fix for the problem.
Well, you have to quantify it. I mean, you just can't have an open checkbook.
Well, I don't think there's amount in it at all. It's just my suggestion.
Yeah, well,
you don't have to vote on that.
I don't understand the condition.
As far as the quantifying it, there's only a finite number of things you can do to address that situation, whether it's painting the curb or doing a no parking for several hours or restriping or whatever. So it's finite.
So I did not hear the 6-month review in Commissioner Keller's motion.
That would be there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry I missed that.
All right. So if I would suggest, I agree with Commissioner Cardoza. I have a concern about being basically an open-ended blank check kind of a condition. You could have a scenario where 10 years from now there's a problem that doesn't exist today, and under that condition they'd be obligated to pay to fix it. I would suggest that we have the traffic consultant review the TDM and that you give me the authority to revise, modify the TDM, and maybe reasonable conditions to address whatever issues the consultant identifies. And of course, if the applicant doesn't like what comes out of that process, they would always have the recourse to come back to the commission and plead their case. But so we do the consultant review and then tweak the TDM plan as necessary. Then we do a 6-month review after operation starts and see what problems there might still be and have the applicant, fix those, and then we're done.
With that and with the confusion that the commission has, I would agree with that and remove my other condition.
So, Charlie, would the consultant review be just of the TDM, or would it also be of the physical circulation drop-off situation?
Both.
Good, okay.
All right.
So do you want to read back the motion so they all understand it?
Probably restate the...
Let's see if I got it. So it would be to approve with amended conditions to require that staff hire a consultant to review the TDM plan and make whatever modifications the consultant recommends to the TDM plan. Then 6 months after operation, staff will review the situation and see if there's a problem. And if there is a problem, then the conditions will be further modified, or the TDM plan will be further modified to address that problem. And we will have cross-traffic does not stop signs at the 63rd and Oil intersection.
Could you just add TDM and circulation?
Oh, okay. Well, I have traffic study down here, but yeah, TDM and circulation.
Yeah.
And in that TDM, would that also include the commitment to provide, say, a prepaid Clipper card for employees? I would like to...
Well, I didn't have that explicitly. Do you want to add that?
I think that should come up in your study if that's necessary.
Yeah, I agree.
That is explored.
I would like to see it explored as part of the, maybe some portion is paid by the school to incentivize public transit.
Have we ever done that with any other business in Emeryville?
Well, we've required easy passes on the recent residential projects.
But this project isn't.
How long was that for? Like 10 years or something?
This is a for-profit business. Have we ever required that of any business in Emeryville?
doesn't meet the parking demand, so this is a great.
I don't-
But they
I
also,
don't-
but they also don't have enough employees to qualify for Easy Pass.
Yeah, I was going to say, they probably don't. You need a certain minimum number. The residential projects would qualify because they had so many units. This probably wouldn't, but Clipper card, anybody can get Clipper cards.
Yeah. It's just basically, yeah, if that could be included in the
Study.
So include a consideration of Clipper cards for employees as part of the TDM plan.
Correct.
Do you want to,
Okay.
I'm with that.
do you want to get the applicant's response to any of this?
They feel they would like to.
You okay? Yes?
I understand all of your guys' concerns in traffic. All that we would ask is that you don't burden us in the future to resolve any traffic issues that may extend beyond us.
We
So
remove that.
any of the other tenants that may cause traffic who are currently there may come in. We don't want to have all eyes turned to us and say, the 177 student school is causing all these problems and we want you to fix those on our stretch of street when there's much larger tenants who are here who may have a lot more employees traveling that road and having us fix it for the whole entire city. That's all I would
Reassured,
ask.
we'd remove that.
Okay, that's all I would ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just,
Sarah
we're a
pointed out.
small guy.
Sorry, Sarah pointed out we have a sort of a parallel condition about an employee trip reduction program. I think we're talking about both, right? We're
Yes.
talking about the whole thing.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson? Okay, you ready to vote? Commissioner Cardoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunkel?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Coomerly?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tan?
Aye.
Chair Moss?
Aye.
7 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. This is a good job.
That's it?
Go back to it.
I think so. So I think our next item